And welcome back to ScavTalk, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to be doing a news roundup, get you caught up on all the news this week. And then I think we're going to jump straight into a bit of a, I don't want to say interview, but a chat with a person who is a modder for Tarkov SP, which I'm very curious. We're going to be respectful of the individual and the circumstances, but I myself am just very intrigued about the philosophy and sort of how one gets into this and modding in general. I'm a big modder. I say modder, downloader of mods. I just played Cyberpunk and set up mods, and it was a complete disaster. Anyways, then we're going to switch back to some various topics within Tarkov. I've been thinking about some nade stuff, and I've done some things to switch it up. And Giga's got some interesting results from his hideout money making that he's been tracking.
Yep. So that's that. So Tarkov is, I guess, like kind of light this week, right? Relatively news-wise, there's not too much going on. Like the things that I had noted primarily was, again, I think it's more arena stuff. I'm probably going to see like the news pace on arena be faster than on the base game. I would say, even though the demand is lower, that's like part of the reason, right? Because they need to add various things and do stuff. So
Right.
they have they're gonna bring a new map into the game called Block. So they just showed this on Twitter, and there's like a whole bunch of different pictures that they showcased, and it's basically like some portion of it looks like Streets. Basically, it's like the design philosophy from Streets of Tarkov, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of cool. I know that some people have wished that they would actually bring in like specific locations from EFT into arena so that you could like practice, dorms or like a part of resort or bits of labs or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe eventually they do that, but for now it seems like they're trying to keep it completely separate. That you're not just gonna. Because I mean, I'm torn as to how I feel about that, honestly. Because can you imagine having people who like just train dorms the whole time, and then they go into the base game and they're just like pretty much unkillable because they get like 20 to 30 times the playtime in that one very specific place. I do feel like that would maybe detract from the main game. I kind of agree with the process right now. Like I understand why people would like it, but I don't think it's necessarily good for the base game to have people be able to train in a certain area. So yes, this is going to be kind of neat. I guess like there's hopefully going to be a little bit of verticality to it in some sense. Should be quite good. I've actually been playing like the new map Chop Shop recently, and like man, I'm like it's just like so tiny. I'm just very bad at that map. It's very very hard. It feels like you want to just run forwards and deathmatch, but if you do that, you just die. You have to play it slow, even though the map's like really really small. But you turn the first corner and like the enemy team are right there, so you have to like almost be like more careful. So that's that. I'd actually have to pull it up. I can't remember exactly how far we are through the arena roadmap, but I know the other thing that they've been doing within arena specifically is they added a new feedback form that opens up if you just open the game up and close the game. When the game closes, they've had this before in the base game. When they close the game, you get this like feedback form pop up and says, what things would you like to see quicker or not so fast. There's things like, do you want to see like a search and destroy mode and like stuff like that in the feedback form, which is kind of cool. And like the stuff that's most annoying, is it like sound? Is it desync? Is it presets? Do you want to be able to customize your own presets? It's like actually the questions are quite good. Do you know? Like it shows they're thinking about the right things in the questions that they asked, which is quite nice. I was talking about this on the stream yesterday because when I run out of time at the end, I have been trying to do like one game of arena at the end of each stream it's good to keep our eye on and stuff. And we kind of came to the conclusion that if you just put search and destroy in as the game mode, it probably does fix half the issues, right? It's like you don't need the cleanup crew anymore. Then you've got asymmetry of objectives, which is actually kind of important for this type of game, and blah blah blah. So we will see. But that's that's kind of intriguing. I think that's it for arena. Let me see. There's a tourney coming up. Probably not gonna be able to find this like straight off the bat. But there's a tournament coming up in the I series, which is a LAN, or it's called Insomnia. Insomnia like gaming festival these days. I call it the I series because I'm old school. But it's like the UK's biggest LAN, which it was the one that I went to last time to go and like
Mhm.
check out, but it turns out there's gonna be a lot more people going this time. I am still not sure if I can actually even make it at all. I don't know. We'll see. But I think like ITB team are going to be there, and um that's the Hunter like running a community tournament on the 20 like from the 29th. It's literally like next week in the
Hmm.
UK. So we'll see. That's gonna be kind of fun, I guess. So hopefully, like, if I was going to make it out, like maybe I can go down for like Friday Eve, like afternoon, evening, or something. I'm
Mhm.
not sure, but yeah, we'll see. So I've got like a busy weekend, and it's kind of all been announced. A bit too late for me to like change too much stuff around, unfortunately. But yeah. So that's pretty much that. I don't think. Did you see anything for the main game? Because I don't think there's anything for actual base EFT unless I'm mistaken. There's
No,
usually
I
like
don't
every
think
time we finish,
so.
there's usually something, and then I scroll through, and I'm just like, oh crap, we forgot to talk about like whatever, right? It's like so easy to forget. The the only thing for the base game is just like there's just been like a bunch of random drama going on in the community. Like obviously, like cheating is a big topic at the moment, and people are frustrated about it, and it's pretty bad. And BSG announced their 33,000 latest bans of the cheating accounts, which is quite a lot. I mean, I think that was since from January or something. Like that's a lot of players. It's a lot of players. And so with that already kind of as the backdrop to the general conversation, a few posts blew up on Twitter, like started by Mr. Goat, who we all know and love from the Wiggle video, who posted up basically saying like, it's been a year since the Wiggle video, and like what effects it had, that kind of thing. I think I'm going to read out his status actually. Let me just pull it up. He said, it's been a year since the video. I think it's finally time for an update. And he said, like, oh, Nikita and Battlestate Games, would you be willing to have a chat about the cheating situation? I promise to have a fair and balanced conversation. Well, needless to say, like that tweet basically just exploded pretty negatively in general. Like, is obviously not going to get a conversation with Nikita and Battlestate about the cheating situation. I wouldn't have thought. I think that'd be extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just like there's I don't want to talk about it for too long, but this brought up a whole bunch of drama and things I didn't realize about Go. Because I actually think that despite, like, he's a very controversial character,
Mhm.
and I think that he's intriguing, either which way you think about him. And I hadn't realized that because he was doing this investigative journalism thing, right?
Mhm.
Where he was looking into other stuff like, scam games and things like that, and like making YouTube content out of it. So they're primarily like a YouTube, like making documentary style long form YouTube to get viewership, right? That's really the deal.
Mhm.
And I hadn't realized that he actually had a second channel that he's created relatively
Oh,
recently with other stuff unrelated to gaming. Because I guess he didn't want to put it all on his main channel because that's like gaming specific, and the other
sure.
stuff kind of made sense. But he made two other videos over on this other channel, and one of them was documenting, or it was like coming to a conclusion about one of the school shootings in the US. It's like very very controversial, not something that I actually knew anything about at all.
Mhm.
But the long and the short of it is that he has an extraordinarily controversial take, and people didn't really like it, and that kind of bled over into this conversation here about the state of his journalism, about whether he showcases things that are uncertain as fact, and like has a very strong bias to his stuff to just try to like what's the word, like bring attention to his content and get viewership kind of thing. It was sort of the implication, which I don't think is necessarily unfair, unnecessarily unfair criticism. But needless to say, it was a classic case of lots of people getting involved. Ewing in particular got quite het up about it, and one peg got dragged into the conversation as well because someone asked his take on it, and he quote tweeted it with his take, and he sided with AWM, and it's just like anyway, it was just a huge mess. Um, I think like no matter what you think about Goat, like I don't think he necessarily has like a responsibility. Like he may well be the a part of the cause of increasing cheating recently or since the video for like ESP or whatever, maybe. But I don't really think he has like a responsibility either which way, like to or not to make the video. I don't know. Like you can blame him for it if you want to, but my take is that it was kind of his choice to do it. I don't think he should necessarily be like vilified for it because anybody could really have done that. But I do see where some people are coming from. That is his stuff is kind of designed to I don't know, exaggerate or to cause outrage or whatever. Like he definitely does that a bit, and I think there's a segment of that that's like part of being a good creator, but there's also a segment of that which if you do it too much, then you kind of burn your goodwill with people.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that last sentiment because I mean, I think even you and I agree. Like the actual, Wiggle video was like very compelling. The way it was like structured and edited,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, structured mainly.
Hmm.
Like he knows what he's doing, and he's had like prior to that video, he's made some others, but he's also like had like at least a year or two in shorts. I mean, he was like pumping them out from what I recall. So like he knows what he has a good sense, and I do think it's as a creator, it's like tricky because a lot of it in this social media space you're playing with, it's like marketing and like social
Mm.
engineering and psychology. So there's like certain things you can do. Like one example of my own that I learned from was I was doing a short for Airwing some time ago, and it was like early wipe, and I think it was like him and some other guys, whatever. They were like going to extract, and because the YouTube short's only 1 minute long, you can only cram so much in there. So,
Yeah.
but they had made like a comment like, "Oh, it's the extract camper or something." But they killed the guy in like a spot that's not anywhere near an extract. Like they killed him like inside the USEC building on customs, like the one
Oh.
where, yeah. But they said that, and I put like as the intro, I did like some crappy AI voiceover that was like, camping, extract camping on White Day. And like all the comments are like, he wasn't extract camping. And like, I knew it was like deceitful ish, like
Yeah.
it was like a gray area, but a little bit more darker of a gray area because but it's crazy because like it kind of got rewarded
Mm.
because it got more traction, but also it got punished because it was clickbaity. And there was this other one that I saw. It was a short recently on YouTube, got recommended. I don't remember the context. I clicked on it and I watched it, and the person was like, "I'm just kidding. This is all fake. I just want to tell you you're beautiful and I love you." And I instantly swiped away, and I was so mad, and I was like, "Damn it, dude. They literally like I don't like it's almost like shame on me because whatever they were selling, I was like, yeah, I want to believe that. I want to click on
Mm.
on that. You know what I mean? So it's almost like shame on me, but also shame on them for doing that because I was so messed up. I was so pissed, dude. It's like last time I'm ever clicking on the short again.
I think that's the thing, right? It's like you can it's both of these things. Like you can easily like dupe people in because you can overpromise so easily. And I
Mhm,
guess that's the thing with social media because it's so easy. There's no barrier to like go in, right? You're not buying anything, whatever. You're just like clicking on the button, spending 5 seconds
mhm.
of your time watching the intro, and it's like and then you're like, oh, I've been duped, and then you click off. It's like it's just so easy to dupe people because it's so like frictionless to actually go in the first place. But I did see, I think Zicha was talking about it in one of his tweets or whatever. Just people being like, oh, this the classic thing of like you put a typo in your title and just like ramp engagement like crazy or whatever because like every comment's just like, oh, you misspelled this like halfway through like minute or like a minute like 1 minute and 30 seconds like you misspelled this or whatever. There was like a saying that I heard recently and I can't remember what it was, but it was like somebody's rule or something like this, which is that the fastest way to get the answer on the internet is not to ask the question but is to post the incorrect answer.
Oh my god, that's so genius.
Which is like this to a T.
Yeah.
But sort of like in a slightly different format. In that, like people are very, very. No one cares to answer the question, but people are like very quick to point out and like tell you that you're wrong. Like, well, actually, So, yeah, but that can be used for engagement for sure.
Hmm.
That's like part of the thing. So yeah, I mean, I don't really like it when Tarkov Twitter just blows up about some stuff. It's just like whatever. I just like generally keep my head down and just don't say anything. I'm just like, I just can't be bothered like to get involved. It's just a waste of time in my opinion. But
Yeah, that's kind of the approach I took. I mean, I really didn't try to get sucked in at all. I saw a few, tweets here and there, but I really did not. I just kind of stood away from it. And I mean, overall, I would just say, because like, what was it? Maybe like 6 months ago, Goat popped his head back in, and like that resulted in like him calling, like firing shots at Hayes, and like, which was like,
oh yeah,
you remember that? Yeah. And I don't
yeah.
like, there's like, I want to like believe, like, I like to think that Goat means well, but I'm like not so certain about that anymore. I feel like there's a bit of a pattern, and I don't know if that's like just getting caught up in it all, you know? Like, I mean, he basically went from like what, 10K, 20K subscribers. I don't know, but you put out a 2 million, 3 million view video that gets
Yeah.
like headline articles. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you found success. You know, I mean, I'm not even like saying like ego wise, just like in general. It's like, you know, that's pretty changing, pretty big time, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I don't know. Like, I think, I think it's very smart. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's a very smart guy. Like, whether you like him or you hate him, I think
Yeah.
he's very smart. Like, he knows how to get attention on the internet, and that's,
Hmm.
if you want to go down like the way that he's gone, then he's doing it pretty successfully up until now, at least. I don't know. Like, at some point, causing outrage or whatever is like one way of doing it, and he does seem to be pretty good at doing that. He's one of those people who I feel like a lot of it's just kind of like almost for the show in some ways. Like, I think if you sat down with him in real life and like you were his friend or whatever, I'm sure he'd be like a very reasonable person. But I think he's like, yeah, I think it's for the internet, the stuff that he.
Hmm.
I don't know. That's my take on it. That's my take. I think he knows exactly what he's doing with it.
All right. Following that, we have this new feature, which I'm not really familiar. Like, Giga, you're gonna have to explain this to me. I'm kind of like baffled about this, honestly.
Yeah, so I'm not. I'm. This is going to be the controversial cast today. So like, I'm not sure exactly how like good slash bad this is in the eyes of BSG or whoever. This is on the Tarkov.Dev website, which is on the sort of the fringes of like the less salubrious section of the kind of Tarkov tools sort of end of the spectrum, I would say. But I find their website extremely useful, and there's some very good stuff in there, like hideout calculators, whatever. Anyway, there's a new thing that's popped up from them, which is in the players section. And what it does is somehow it utilizes the player profile viewer in some fashion to gain information, most of which is available just like on the player profile view page. So if you get killed by somebody and you click their name and then you view profile, you can see their character, you can see their stats, or at least a certain portion of them. You can see their gun and their loadout, at least the gun that they came into the raid with. This seems to piggyback on the back of that in some way. So it has all the stats on there. Church is currently looking up me and looking at what my player profile is, because I was like messing around with the SKS, like recording some footage. But I'm actually quite interested. We could kind of do this live. So what this does, if as Church is doing there, you click into the SKS, it shows you like my full loadout. So rather than just being able to see the picture of my PMC, you can see the actual loadout that I have. And when you click on the weapon, it shows you all the breakdown of all the attachments there. If you click on the gamma, it shows you everything inside the gamma. The same thing for the bag. So like if I just transfer, because I'm already because I'm like not in a raid or anything, this should be live. So if I just like put a load of stuff in my bag, or like put a load of things on, then it should just like show it straight away, I think. Yeah. So like if you refresh it, I wonder how quick it is. Like, can you refresh the page and see what happens? I'm very interested. Okay, so it hasn't come up straight away. I wonder how quick it is. I wonder when it gets
We'll
a
give it a
refresh.
couple minutes and see.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously it can be quite useful, especially for groups. Like for me as a solo, I'm not as bothered. Like people could use it against me in theory. But with this new player profile thing, it was always slightly controversial that you could look at somebody's like loadout as soon as you were dead. So if you were
Yeah,
say you're a duo against a solo and you die, you can look at their profile, you can see their gun, and you can see their stats, and you can probably glean, I guess you can already see what ammo it was because you see that on the death screen,
sure.
and so you can sort of infer like some information that you wouldn't be able to without that stats page. And this goes one step further because you can see everything in their bag. Now, the one thing that I haven't tested about this, and I don't know if this is true or not, is that like the stats page, whether this is the same in that when you go into raid, and somebody said this wasn't true the other day, but I'm pretty sure it is true. I'm still pretty sure it is true. When you go into raid, I'm pretty sure it's frozen. I don't think it's live the whole time. Someone was telling me that wasn't true and that they tested it, but then other people had also said they tested it and it wasn't true. It was just static. So like when you're outside of the raid, the page is dynamic and live. But in raid, it should be a freeze frame of whatever you went into the raid with. It should
Okay.
be. Now, what people were doing was they were taking the bag and they were taking their guns in the bag. So when you view their player profile, their player appears, if they're still in the raid and they haven't died yet, with no gun. Because it was a freeze frame of when you
Oh,
entered,
I
right?
see.
And so then you equip your gun in raid, and then they can't tell what weapon you've got. For example, you could do that with your helmet, your armor, whatever. So
Mhm.
they don't really know it's you. However, with this tool, obviously you can just click into their backpack and see what their gun is, which is kind of interesting. So there's like extra information. There's also things underneath that I think you were showing before. Like it shows you all of their skills and where they're at, like all of their DMR, assault rifle, like immunity, vitality, blah blah, and all of their masteries as well. Like why those are shared, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Which is a bit strange. This is kind of like the classic case of Tarkov oversharing, within from client to client. Like, why would any client ever need to know another client's heavy vest skill? It's just bizarre.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, this popped up. I didn't really know about it at first. I actually found out about it on Twitter because people were talking about it. I think it was
Mhm.
Airwing actually, because they did a post which was, we're updating the website, blah blah blah, which usually means microtransactions, but there weren't any more coming. And he said, "Oh, I wonder if it's to do with this new players feature." And I was like, "What's he talking about?" And then I did a bit of fishing around, and I was like, "Oh, I see," because I hadn't seen this until literally a couple of days ago. So yeah, it's a bit bizarre.
Yeah, bizarre, definitely. I mean, this feels like it's breaching something. I don't know what, but this feels, I
Yeah, it's
don't
a bit
know.
weird.
Feels like it's problematic.
Yeah, because I think like these guys, like I don't think they're necessarily I don't know, they're not necessarily being like hounded by BSG or anything. But I feel that
Mhm.
this particular functionality puts them their head above the parapet a little, because it feels more than just using flea market information to figure out which craft is the best, looking at boss spawn
Right.
chance rates, having a database of all the items, that those kind of things. Like, because that's what mostly is on Tarkov.Dev, just like useful stuff.
Mhm.
Where for this is like, okay, you definitely can't get this information. Like, I cannot look at your assault rifle skill in the game.
Yeah,
It's
that's
I can't do that.
that's
I
really
have to
weird.
use. It's really strange. So I feel like it starts to get a little awkward.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, fair play to them, but I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Bizarre.
All right. Well, any other news topics? Anything
I think that's
else?
it. I think that's it for now. Some of the other stuff I'll talk about at the end.
Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and move into our next segment. I'd like to welcome Mr. Fontaine to the ScavTalk podcast. How are you doing this evening or morning?
Hello, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I know we've kind of like talked intermittently through various stuff and channels. Mostly me pestering you about what do you think about this? What about this? Because I've played. For those that don't know, I guess why don't I let you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I go by Fontaine. I'm just a modder for SBT. That's pretty much the long and short of it.
And how long have you been playing Tarkov for?
Right, yeah, so I've been playing Tarkov since closed alpha. Like Factory is the only map. So Tarkov has changed a lot since then.
Mm.
And I kind of got into SBT, I suppose, about 2 years ago. When you've been playing Tarkov for a long time, you kind of get a bit bored of playing wipe after wipe. And SBT kind of piqued my interest, I suppose.
Mm.
And just the capability to modify the game how you want it to be. We've all been frustrated with the certain aspects of EFT or certain directions they've taken Tarkov. So for me, it was kind of like a way to see how Tarkov can be the way I want it to be.
That's interesting. So have you, because as I mentioned earlier, I've been trying to play a little bit Cyberpunk 2077. I finally got around to doing it. And, me being me, the first thing I did as I went and looked, okay, what kind of improvements can we do? What can we upscale the textures, can we improve the lighting? So I did all this stuff. And, there's even some crazy stuff like they're trying to rig AMD's frame generation into your NVIDIA card by tricking the driver ID, all this crazy stuff. Needless to say, none of it actually worked, and it was a horrible process installing mods. It was awful. But have you done this type of stuff? Like, have you ever modded other games before, like on your own, just actually sitting down learning
Actually,
it?
no. Tarkov or SBT is my first attempt at modding. My first attempt at programming as well. I kind of learned how to program through modding SBT.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you just got into it just purely, practically zero background experience, and just learned as you go.
Yeah, I mean, like, I did a few like Udemy courses on web development or something like that, but nothing game related before that.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I remember it's funny that you're saying about, after playing wipe after wipe, whatever, because we had like numbers of Tarkov on here, not, I guess it's quite a while ago now. And he was saying that, because he like broke down a bunch of stuff and was involved in sort of the back end things as well. And that in terms of actual Tarkov, like all he used to do is just play factory.
Yeah,
with his friends.
exactly.
And it's so funny. People get like it seems to be like a running theme. Anybody who's kind of gets involved in the back end, you're like so deep in the back end that's just like people aren't really playing the game anymore. It's like actually quite funny.
Oh man, I haven't played a full wipe since maybe 12.11.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like, when there's a wipe, I'd play for maybe like a week to play with the new features or the new map, but then kind of get bored after that.
So what kind of keeps your interest in doing what you're doing then? Is it just like the problem solving angle of it, or are you still trying to make the thing that you want to make? Is that still the driving force now?
Yeah, like my focus of modding Tarkov has been realism. It's a bit of a controversial topic, I suppose. Like, people have different interpretations of what realism is, and does it make a game more fun or not? For me, I enjoy trying to replicate, like the real life statistics of, say, different armor or ammo or ballistics in general. I'm kind of trying to see how far you can push Tarkov in that direction. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this probably harkens back to the stuff that you've looked at before, right, Church? This is directly the things that you've been playing around with, right? In terms of like weapon balance and the like more levers to pull in modding, that kind of stuff, right? These are the mods that we've been talking about in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I guess your main sort of mod, or the one that I know you most for, Fontaine, is the Realism Mod, aptly named, and it's kind of like, as you describe, a very complete overhaul, gamifying real life mechanics into a video game.
Yeah. It's like Nikita would often say, Tarkov is as realistic as playable.
Mm-hmm.
Is how he put it. Whereas I take a different approach, where it's like as realistic as possible. I don't claim it's supposed to be fun. I don't claim it's balanced necessarily, but like, in my opinion, when you kind of aim to make something realistic, depending on your approach, in many ways, I think it can actually enhance the game. It can actually, in its own way, make things more balanced. A lot of people disagree with that, but I mean, an example.
In what sense? Yeah.
I mean, like, this in, say, ballistics, for example. In EFT, say you have 545 PRS, or some kind of like low tier rifle round. Like, the pen on those rounds are so low that helmets will tank that. It's like it's borderline useless. Like I don't even know why it's in the game. The way live is balanced, to be honest. Whereas realistically, in quotes, like those rounds will still, for the most part, penetrate better than any pistol round. Like they'll penetrate a helmet, for example. So if you balance it in that way, you're increasing the usefulness of all the ammo in the game. So there's no... It's more that rather than having ammo that's useless, ammo that's usable, and ammo that's meta, all ammo is usable. And it's just kind of optimization. So you can choose, I want to optimize my ammo to be higher pen or higher damage. It's still usable. You're not going to be at a severe disadvantage. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I guess like when you do that, like there's pros and cons to like all balance. So like when you do that kind of thing, then you, to some people, if they were playing it, say if it was in live like that, for example, then some people just then wouldn't really bother because I've been talking about this quite a bit actually recently myself, about these like micro optimizations that we make about +1 ergo on this thing, or -1% recoil on that other thing, which you just can't really tell. And like the new armor system in Tarkov is kind of like that in some ways as well. Like you almost, if you take it too far, sometimes in certain aspects, you can get to the point of, well, it doesn't really matter, so I'll just kind of use whatever, and then the choice is sort of removed. I guess that's probably the counter argument, but
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like with the play system, I suppose it depends what your perspective is. Like if we're coming from how Tarkov used to be, where armor is like this big bubble of protection, like Halo armor or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, helmets used to be that way, where a helmet protected the whole head. Doesn't matter if you shoot them in the face, like it makes no difference. And you could argue that the way the plate system works now is similar to how helmets work. Like you often see people say that, helmets are useless because you just get shot in the face. But it's like you're adding, if your perspective is that getting shot in the head is bad, but a helmet gives me a % chance to survive that. And if you apply that to plates, it's like your perspective is that plates aren't there to guarantee that I don't die. It's just increasing my % chance of survival.
Yeah, I think that's right. Actually, I think that is right. I feel like Tarkov players have like a funny experience with this kind of stuff because it's like, well, how are these things balanced? Well, usually by price, right? And people say the helmets aren't. Well, like if the ULAC was ₹1, then people would buy it, so that would be worth it. But it's because people are referring to the price. But it's funny because like the longer I play Tarkov, the more I've like min-max stuff and look through everything and look through every item and like try to look at every stat and test everything and like come to the conclusions about all these things. There's two distinct things in Tarkov, I think, or two distinct sort of like mindsets about gearing up and loadouts that you end up going down, right? At the beginning, you're thinking about economizing. Okay, what's the best thing for the price? What's the best stuff that I can get for the price? And there's always an element of that involved in loadout building. But the further on you get, you realize this kind of ties hand in hand with so many Tarkov players saying like, well, money's easy to get though. You can easily have many, tens of millions if you do this and that and the other. And for those players, really, they should be thinking more in terms of survival rates. Like, okay, well, it's a weird conversation because it's like, well, if I run, I don't know, the ULAC is a good example. Like, is the ULAC actually worth it? Well, that's a difficult question to answer because it depends on the rest of your kit, right? If a ULAC saves you, but you've only got a VPO, then it doesn't really matter. Whereas if the ULAC saves you and you've got spear and, class 6 plates and a Osprey, then it matters a lot more. Like all the pieces are kind of tied into each other.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, even if in the most geared case, on average, you will lose money, quote unquote, by running the ULAG, your survival rate will still actually go up. And if your money is going up anyway, like what you're talking about is the difference between you end the week with 55 million versus 53 million. You say, well, for that increase in survival rate, potentially that 2 million was worthwhile because I died less in those raids. even though I'm not necessarily making as much money, I have enough money to do what I want to do, and my survival rate has gone up on that basis. And I feel that a lot of people like miss that, because then they still say, even when they've got many millions, they say, oh, this isn't worth it. And it's like, well, it still does increase your survival rate. You make way more money than you need to cover the, to cover your, like, it depends whether your goal is to like maximize the ruble number or to maximize like your survival rate number. And there's some kind of blend in between. But so many people focus on rubles, and despite saying that money is easy to make, still don't necessarily want to buy the items that are going to increase their survival rate, because they're like technically uneconomical, right? But it's just like, well, sometimes you're going to get shot in the head with you, and sometimes you're going to survive. And even if it doesn't necessarily cover it, like, it's still worth buying if you can make money in general faster than you can spend it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it depends. What's your goal, I suppose, ultimately? Like, some people play to, make as many rubles as possible, and other people play just to do the quests or just have fun, like, ultimately. Like, when I played live regularly, like, I never went for the meta kits. I always ran a kind of, like, middle ground of value for money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, it's like, do you want to pay more money for a higher percent chance to survive? I feel like some people have the perspective of, well, I spent X amount of rubles, therefore I should survive. You know what I mean? And it's like, ultimately, I think it should come down to map awareness, game experience, and skill, rather than, oh, I grinded the game for 100 hours to make X amount of money, and therefore, because I spent so much money on a slick, I should win that fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in terms of like realistic balancing from your perspective, where do you see those kind of like balancing levers? Like, okay, so you say you make these things like more realistic. Do you balance that by price? Like, where would you put the prioritization in terms of, access, traders, like those kind of systems? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, I'll be honest, like, with my mod, I focus on just replicating real life in terms of stats.
Okay.
And performance. Like, economy is not something I really focus on. So, like, if you have a player economy, I think it kind of, there's a sort of self-balancing. Like, say from BSG's perspective, they probably have the means to see what items people are buying, kind of what the evolving meta is.
Yeah.
And it's not something I think you have to worry about too much in that sense. I think it's something that can kind of self-correct over time. In addition to that, if things are more realistic, I think the gap between the lowest tier and the highest tier kind of diminishes. So it kind of matters less in a sense. I think a good example of that is the recent recall update with patch 14. The difference between a meta gun and a stock gun is probably the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah. Like,
you can get by with a stock M4. You know what I mean? You don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of rubles just to have a viable gun to compete with other people. I think that kind of philosophy, in my opinion, overall, having a smaller gap between the worst and the best ammo, or the worst and the best armor, gun, whatever, is a healthier, better balance overall. And I think it leads to less frustration.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we talked about this prior to it, just slightly concerned about, a big part of Tarkov is about the progression, and if you change the armor so it's less useful, and you change the recall mods and the way recall functions so that metaguns are less useful, again, you kind of almost get to the point where it's like, well, do you remove some part of the game? But I think after playing for 3 months or whatever, like, no, it's actually still fine. Like, you just allow newer players to be more effective. Endgame players will still buy the better stuff with lower recoil and mod their weapons and spend the money, because, like, what else are you going to spend the money on, right? You're still going to try and do the best you can. And it does still, like, make some difference. But I feel like in some ways now it's more down to the individual skill of the shooter in some sense, as well as people being less squishy due to the armor change. But yeah, no, it is. I think it is in a decent state. I know people have been talking about this for a while. I think that's like one interesting thing for me that is the main takeaway for me about the mods, because me and Church have a sort of different opinion, I guess, in terms of the modded version of the game or whatever. Like I've never played it, and I can't imagine myself doing so just because I like the online experience and I like playing against real PMCs and that kind of thing. But where my interest mostly lies in terms of like as a test bed. And we went through I think we went through the weapon modding on one of these casts, just showing all the different ways you can change the weapon modding system. And we've talked extensively about expanding it out of just recoil and ergonomics. So you can get, we've said it before, but more levers to pull in terms of making your gun different and more unique, I guess, to you. And you can change more things about it rather than being the simplistic model that it is right now. And that's, for me, where the value in this modding scene comes in, is in terms of test beds, because we don't really get to try enough stuff. Tarkov's supposed to be in beta, but like we only get a big update every 6 months, and it's not like we have multiple branches with lots of different tests going on at one time. Like the game, and we've talked about this before as well, but in my opinion, it's basically a live service game. I don't think the beta doesn't really cover it anymore. It's like it's a live service game that's being built as we speak, because I don't think there's enough testing. So that's why I think the modding can be very valuable, and I do think that BSG misses out on some of that testing, right? Because you can be a lot more creative or quick, iterate through lots of different possibilities much faster than doing it with a community of up to, I don't even know, 500,000 players, where you have to make sure the live server is not completely messed up, and that's where the value is for me, I think, on this stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, personally, for myself, I don't really play SBT. I just mod it,
Yeah.
Like, my background, I'm mostly into competitive or semi-competitive multiplayer FPS games. So, like, SBT, I completely understand why people enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it. But personally, for myself, I prefer PvP.
Mm.
Like, you touched on it being a test bed. I just wanted to kind of say that there's this sort of attitude or comparison people make with SBT and EFT. It's like, oh, they did that in SBT. Why can't they easily do that in live? The way we make mods, it's kind of hacked together in a sense. Like, the way I make Realism Mod and the features I've created, they can't just copy paste that code.
Yeah.
There's a process you have to go through if you're a professional game studio. There's a certain standard you have to meet. And especially if it's a multiplayer game, you can't just... The way I do it, I don't have to worry about there being multiple different players or balance in that sense. I can kind of just focus on the feature, and like by any means, I just get it done. It doesn't matter how stable it is, how prone to bugs it is in a multiplayer setting. But you're right. It is good to prove concepts, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're talking about weapon modding. In Realism Mod, it's not just recoil and ergo. You have mods that change camera recoil or dispersion or flatness, vertical recoil, horizontal recoil. And I think conceptually it works. And a mod for SBT can kind of hash out how viable something is, how fun something is. And you're right, it's valuable in that sense.
Yeah, I think some of these things, they sound good, and like we've talked about, if you separated out vertical and horizontal recoil, even just that, and it sounds like a great idea, but you don't really know until you've played it, right? A lot of these things come down to just like the implementation, and then just how they feel to the player can be very, very different. A really good example of this is the one we've talked about a long time ago, which is when BSG was fiddling around with semi-auto and stopping people from using macros and that kind of thing, and segregating out RPM for semi-auto weapons. And their first implementation that they did, you click the mouse button, and when you clicked it the second time, if it was like within the cooldown, right, of like the semi-auto RPM, it just wouldn't shoot on the second click. And it felt absolutely atrocious.
I remember.
Yeah, you remember it was terrible,
It
right?
was awful.
And they had to change it, and it's like the tiniest tweak in the code, and they had to change it that, you know, if you click, then it'll fire on the next, you know, after the cooldown's finished on the next time. So if it's
It
like
cues the
600,
shot.
yeah, it cues the shot basically. And like that tiny little tweak in the code, it's like it's like night and day user experience. And you like as a gamer, you unless you like sat there and like tested it, whatever, like you couldn't really tell what they'd done, but it just felt bad. You just could
Yeah.
tell that it felt awful. And they'd made that tiny tweak. Now it feels great. Like it's been like that ever since. So it's like these things are very, very hard to figure out how good or bad they're going to be. And so I do respect that, that speed of, innovation, iteration, whatever it is. If you're implementing something, you can give something a go, get people to try it and say, okay, well, that didn't work, or this was good, but that was bad, and we can change that and whatever. So yeah, I think it's good in that basis. Like I'd love to see a bit more customization and dynamism within the Tarkov modding space, because like now, yeah, we've got like billions of parts, that's fine, but like especially now with the recoil changes, it's like, okay, well, what does it really do? Like the recoil doesn't do that much now. And so a lot of it's about ergonomics, but again, that's kind of just ADS speed. Like it's not as interesting as maybe it could be. So yeah, I think it would be nice to see some of these concepts at least make their way into the base game in some fashion.
Yeah. I think another valuable aspect is, there's a lot of testing going on, like especially with ballistics recently.
Mm.
Trying to figure out how it works, what the bugs are, why they're happening. I think there's only so much you can glean from in-game testing. Like you can still figure out what the bug is, but you can't really figure out why it's happening.
Yeah.
And like if I was in BSG's shoes, I'd find it valuable to have people. And I'm trying to be careful how I phrase this. Who understand on a deep level why the bugs are happening, and able to pinpoint, here's where the bug is happening, this is why it's happening. Like surely, like that's an expedient way to solve the problem, rather than kind of just wing it. Like it feels like BSG, like obviously they have a QA team, right? But
yeah,
I kind of question how in depth the testing is, if that makes sense. Like, why not leverage the community to help find the bugs, solve the bugs?
Yeah, I agree, because I think when I hadn't really thought about QA particularly. Like I've never worked professionally as a coder or at a technology firm or anything like that, so I'm not really in the best position to think about that kind of stuff. But when Nikita, they had that Christmas stream, right, where he talked to all the different teams, and they were talking to the QA team, and it did sound like, as well as obviously testing some stuff, right, they've got to test all the things, and it's not just, I guess it's probably is very little of we're going in raid and doing XYZ, right? They're like writing, unit tests to make sure the code actually runs properly, that the game doesn't crash. Like it's all of that stuff, like primarily, I think, that the professional QA people are doing. And like, yeah, probably doing some testing on the changes too. But I feel that the outcome of the implementation of mechanics within the sort of the game's format is probably lower on the priority list than stability, making that kind of task, I would imagine. And so I agree with you. I do wish that there was some kind of community program. I don't know how they do it, but they're very scared about people having access to stuff. So I think that's what maybe puts them off. But yeah, some people who are able to help in that basis, because if that's effectively what people like myself try to do in many ways, is go through in game and see what you can and see how this stuff works. But it's really hard to do it just a co-op offline mode or whatever. Like there's lots of things you have to try and keep constant, but it's tricky. Even just things coming down to shooting players in different areas of plates, whatever. Like the models move around, like you can't see where the hitboxes actually are. Like there's a lot of guesswork and iterations and loading back into matches saying the co-op server is full, so you have to wait 5 minutes to load in and all this stuff, right? And it's why like some testing is possible and the armor testing is not that bad, but things like Ricochet are just like borderline impossible to test, because yeah, you can do it, and there was somebody who did a huge test on Reddit ages ago, which was quite amazing, but it's the only one that I've ever really done was testing APSX against ballistic glasses, and that was because APSX never used to kill you, because it had 35 damage. So the damage drop off always meant that it didn't kill you. Well, like, it's kind of a interesting example to bring up, because like now it does kill you. And it's like one of the things that I know that, you know, I've raised a few times, being like, there's some weird stuff going on with the head hitbox, but like I can't now tell why anymore. Like as soon as the test goes wrong, the character, like the whoever's in the raid with you dies, and then you have to restart the game. Like, yeah, you can bring in 20 people or something, but that's hard in its own way, because not everybody is, you know, is up to speed with how the testing's done, and then like trying to get everybody to read it out without any human error is also quite tricky. So it's like, it's hard to do stuff in game, and especially things like Ricochet. It's like a nightmare. So yeah, there's a missing link here. I don't know exactly how the link gets, you know, bridged. I don't know how we bridge that gap, but there's definitely a missing link, because people like yourself, and I guess people like me too, would be more than willing to do that and look into that stuff. And half of us are doing that kind of thing anyway, but just in an unofficial capacity. If that makes sense. It's yeah, there's something there. There's something there, but I don't know exactly how you fix it.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation in that sense. Like, there are so many people in the community with a lot of in-depth knowledge of the inner workings of Tarkov who are more than willing to help. Unfortunately, BSG, understandably maybe, are reluctant to take that help.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, they have their own reasons, some of which, but I mean, people may agree with some of them and may disagree with others as well. But like, you know, that's ultimately up to them.
Yeah.
So I just wish, like, it was, it's like I've talked previously about ETS and how I wished ETS was a bit better. Well, ETS this time around with the recoil testing was very good, in my opinion. Like, there was lots of different iterations and that kind of thing. And I was like, this is exactly how it should be done. I don't think it was utilized to the best of its kind of ability in prior tests. But yeah, BSG are learning too. So they've come a long way, as you said, going from factory and a helmet that covers all of your head to
Yeah.
Streets
Exactly.
of Tarkov, and many hundreds of thousands of players and stuff. So, you know, it's developing as time goes on. Who knows? But never say never about this stuff. Like, I guess the only thing that I would say about it is that at this stage, I'm not expecting any changes to like weapons in particular. If we were just talking about like Realism Mod and weapons or whatever, I'm not expecting any changes at this point. I feel like we're probably too close to 1.0. It sounds like they want to push the game out. So, unfortunately, I can't imagine that that's gonna be entering into the game anytime soon. I mean, maybe they could do something like that after release, but we'll we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump back to part where I think it was either you, Fontaine, or Giga. We're kind of talking about this idea of, you know, spending money on the U-Lock, and, you know, this sort of idea that everyone should have sort of like an equal playing ground, so to speak. Because it feels like Tarkov, I mean, I think we're getting more away from that, but it feels like, at least initially, there's this kind of design aspect where they want this sort of like RPG hard system where, you know, the higher the number or the higher the level you are, the more powerful you are, and that's like a direct one-to-one relationship. But it seems like we're getting a lot, you know, as the game's developed, we're getting a lot more away from that. One thing that I thought was one thing that I do like about your mod, is, and this is, it's kind of a hard thing to do because you're trying to balance the realism aspect and what the game's trying to accomplish, but this sort of idea where you want to almost like spec into a particular archetype, you know, kind of like the classic RPG dungeon crawler where, you know, you got your character sheet and you're trying to spec into like a wizard, so you put points in intellect, and, you know, maybe you loot this staff versus a sword because it's not really fit your character. And it feels like Tarkov has, like, you know, aspects of that, you know, of like all the skills and various things, and like, you know, when it comes to combat, you know, it's mostly modding and not so much like your skills don't come into play that much. But getting to my point is, like, one of the aspects I liked about some of the balancing work you done is it felt like you gave a lot of attention to things that kind of were like left in the shadows. Like, you know, for example, like magazine size. It's pretty rare. You know, I think nowadays again we're getting kind of more balanced in Tarkov where drum mags aren't as prevalent as they were, but you know, there's definitely a large period of Tarkov's history where it was always a 60 rounder if it could fit it, right? You know, the biggest mag size, and so there are a lot of these like shorter mags, like they don't really offer enough to really incentivize the player to go for it. You know, the only real incentivation is I'm broke, this is all I can afford, or you know, I can't actually get access to the bigger ones, this is all I have access to. And I thought your mod did a lot of like interesting ideas, and I felt like you maybe I'm, you know, reading into this wrong, but it felt like you kind of bend the rules a bit to sort of make things a bit more viable. Like you were talking about ammo and, you know, how PS or PRS is still going to be better than a pistol round. And it's more about choosing what you're speccing into. Do you want armor penetration, or do you want a round that's maybe designed to be very accurate? You know, it has a high accuracy, or this round, you know, has more gunpowder, so it shoots faster in the gas. I'm not a guns person, so forgive me for, you know, speaking heresy, but it seemed like there was aspects of that. What's kind of what do you make of that? Do you agree with that? And what was your philosophy to some of this stuff?
Well, the way I try to balance it is if I can find actual data, say on a particular bullet or armor, I try to replicate that within the confines of how EFT's, say, ballistic system works. So, like, rather than having a bullet behave 100% how it does in real life,
sure,
it's more that in real life, this bullet penetrates better than that bullet. So that's how I try to balance things. If I have zero data, then I kind of, you know, take a bit of creative liberty, so to speak. Like with the magazines you touched on, there is a feature in Realism Mod where there's a variable reload speed. So different magazines can have a buff to your reload speed. So rather than arbitrarily, say, giving a 60 round mag a debuff to ergo, based on the weight of the magazine, it's faster or slower to reload with that magazine. So it's kind of like a way to balance magazines in a more realistic way that's not as arbitrary, if that makes sense. Like my philosophy is that if you have knowledge of these things, I want it to make sense. Like it's intuitive that a bigger magazine that's heavier is slower to reload. Whereas if a magazine has -5 ergo, I was like, what does that mean exactly? So that's kind of my general philosophy when it comes to balancing. Like, I don't put too much weight into, like, there's still some ammo with the mod. There's still some ammo that's not good. Like in real life, there might be this or that ammo that you know, failed certain trials and wasn't adopted because it had issues of accuracy or whatever, and I'd still balance the ammo to reflect that. So it's not like I'm 100% trying to make it gamey, if that makes sense. I'm still trying to replicate the real performance of the round. I still believe that in doing so, like, real life makes sense. Real life is intuitive. So in replicating real life, for the most part, if you have a little bit of knowledge on the subject, it will make sense to you. Even then, it's like, would you rather, when it comes to the ammo in Tarkov, it's like, you have to learn arbitrary tiers of ammo. It's like, no, BS is better than PS. And in a lot of cases in Tarkov, it doesn't reflect real life, and it's just made up by BSG. It's like, would you rather have a completely arbitrary in terms of the tiering of different rounds? Or if it reflected real life, at least there's some sort of logic to follow. And if you have real life experience or knowledge on the subject, you can, like, you don't have to look up some guide. Does that make sense? You can even just go to Wikipedia and it's like, oh, Wikipedia says that this bullet is better than that bullet in terms of penetration, wherever it is, tumbling, that translates to damage. So that's kind of my thinking when it comes to balancing. Like, it's not like the way I balance Realism Mod. I'm not trying to say that this is how live should be. I'm not trying to claim that this would be balanced for a PvP environment. Like, if I was somehow hired by BSG to balance live, I'm not going to, like, one-for-one translate what I've done with my single-player mods into live. But I would try to use real life to inform the balancing. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is where it gets complicated because this reminds me. A lot of these conversations remind me of conversations we've had over the actually sometimes. How long has ScavTalk been going now? Like a while.
2 years, something like that.
God, like a long time. But when 12.12 was getting introduced and all the ballistics were changing, we had damage drop off and pen drop off come into play, and all of that stuff. And that raised questions at the time about how you've got a realistic system for firing bullets. Bullets come out of the actual barrel themselves with different velocities, and then they slow down realistically. And then you kind of have that like interface between this is real life and how ballistics work in real life, and then the game, and there's an interface there. And the interface in Tarkov is like penetration and damage, and everything is pretty much seen through that lens, right? Like this. Those are the two main stats that we look at for this stuff. So it's kind of like, okay, well, how do you make that make sense? A good example was about how, because in the penetration and damage, the initial values of those things are tied to the initial value as they leave the barrel. Then you can have weird situations where a slow bullet or a weapon with a short barrel, for example, that makes bullets fire more slowly when they leave the barrel, end up having more damage at the same distance as something with a fast, or like a long barrel to make fast bullets, because the damage drop off from a faster round is greater than from a slower round, and because the initial damage and pen is tied to the starting velocity, it actually drops off more quickly, which is weird. So you kind of like you'd need to sort of like back interpolate, but like a more like general question, like how. I guess like how do you think about like their damage and pen in that sense in terms of like realism? Because you're trying to like wrap so much stuff in there. And like another good one that comes to mind that I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts on is fragmentation. Like damage and pen and fragmentation. Like how I guess you're just using the tools you have available, right? You don't really have much choice. But like, yeah, what do you think about those three elements in terms of trying to make them like realistic?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the fact that like out of a shorter barrel, somehow like over a distance it does more damage. I think that's a good example of where realism can actually make things more intuitive. Like intuitively you'd think a shorter barrel means less damage, right?
Yeah.
So for my mod, I made it so every barrel in the game has like a stat called velocity. It's like a factor.
Mm-hmm.
So in live EFT, at the muzzle, like, zero distance, it doesn't matter the barrel length, you're doing the same damage, the same pen. I made it so that the starting pen or damage is factored by the velocity delta of the barrel. Mm-hmm. So a shorter barrel will do less damage, less pen at the muzzle. So therefore at distance, as you'd expect, it does less damage, less penetration.
Yeah.
I think that's an example of where realism can, in certain circumstances, actually make things make more sense. It becomes more intuitive, more logical, to an extent. When it comes to balancing, the way I did, say, armor damage or blunt damage, I actually calculate the kinetic energy of the round, factoring the distance and the barrel length and all of this. Mm-hmm. So that, like, the way it currently works is armor damage, like durability damage, and blunt damage somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't really matter if it's arbitrary so long as it's intuitive. Like, you'd expect a slug from a shotgun to do way more blunt damage than, 9x19 PST. And it's completely fine to do it arbitrarily if you're on the ball and you're balancing in a way that makes sense. I enjoy kind of more immersion systems where you code a system where it takes, say, kinetic energy into account. It's kind of self-balancing in the sense that it will mirror real life, because you have the mass of the round, you have the velocity of the round, and whatever damage number that comes out of that will make sense, as long as you did the math right. So what I'm trying to say basically is that it's completely fine for BSG to do it arbitrarily, so long as there's a certain logic. It doesn't have to even mirror real life. As long as there's an internal logic we can follow and predict, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But personally, I'm a fan of using real stats like kinetic energy or momentum, whatever, because you're far less likely to make a mistake or do something illogical, and it's far more likely to make sense.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Because I think, like, broadly speaking, blunt damage and those kind of features are they're kind of okay in the implementation. You have, especially blunt damage, because it just kind of follows like regular damage with a little bit of kind of penetration component as well in the base game. And you have like the armor damage percentage, which is a little strange, but like broadly speaking, it's not too bad. But yeah, I kind of see what you mean. You're saying like, yeah, you just make an equation of some sorts that you can improve or finesse, like, yeah, kinetic energy, then maybe you'd want to include something else. I don't know. Like I was like, while you were talking, I was kind of like off thinking like, oh, you could almost get rid of pen entirely. You've got like the bullet with its particular material, and you've kind of got like the shape of it and the pressure or whatever, depending on like what speed it hits, whatever. You can almost just like get rid of pen completely as a stat, and it becomes like a result. So it's a physics problem rather than anything else. You've got your bullet material defined and the armor material, and you've got deformation and that kind of thing. Pen's almost irrelevant at that point. Obviously, in the base game, it's an abstraction, but I can see where you're going, right? Like I understand the philosophy. It's like, yeah, if you technically speaking, you could program in all of these things kind of from first principles and just set the equations up, and then the system just does it because it's acting like IRL.
Yeah, exactly. I think a game like Grey Zone is showing promise in that respect. I think they're kind of using that sort of design philosophy for how they're going to balance the game and design the various systems.
Yeah, you're referring to kind of the ballistic gel type stuff that they've got set up, because they showed that video where, and that video was quite cool actually. I've not really delved like super deep into it, but they showed you shoot the gel and then the bullet expands, but if you shoot like a material first, then it's already expanded by the time it gets there and stuff. There's like differences depending on whether you're shooting through terrain and things previously, which is a level of complexity that we don't even have in EFT, which is quite intriguing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I still don't understand, like, what does the expansion actually mean? Like what does that mean when you're hitting a player? Like, are there hitboxes for the different organs and that kind of expansion plays into that? Or is it kind of like, at the end of the day, when it comes to video games, you have to have a number at some point. You have to have a metric for judging whether or not a player died. It's like, you can make it as fancy as you want. At the end of the day, you need a number at the end of the day. And like, no matter how you choose to balance it, it has to be abstracted. We can't, like, recoil is a good example. It's like, you can't translate controlling a gun in real life to a 2D screen with a mouse and keyboard. It's impossible. But what you can do is make it visually and conceptually realistic, in the sense that, an AK firing 7.62 is harder to control than an M4. That's realistic. It doesn't really matter how you represent the recoil or how the player interfaces with that or controls it. I mean, the same will apply to ballistics. It's like, as long as 5.56 M855 has better penetration than 4.6 AP, it's realistic. It doesn't really matter the margins or what that penetration value means exactly.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that's definitely been some people's gripes previously within Tarkov, is just stuff not making sense, right? You had like the mutant, and that's one of the reasons why people railed against the old recoil system so much and wanted a new one, because things like the mutant would outperform the old, MPX and things like that. You have like 7.62 guns out shooting 9mm, and It was crazy, and I still see glimmers of that now. People talking about some weapons, like the 308 weapons, probably being a little bit too good in terms of recoil, because they feel similar to a lot of the 5.56 guns, and they're better than 7.62 by 39, which is a smaller caliber. So yeah, like I think that's the thing. That's what most people are looking for. I think just like logical consistency, like internal consistency, and making it make sense. When things don't make sense, people don't like it, right? And that's obvious.
100%, yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you about, Fontaine, was a bit of like, what's kind of your, I don't even know if approach is the right word, but there's no, it's not, SP Tarkov isn't really like a secret per se. But it's also like very kind of like hush hush. And I'm curious, like, what is your sort of interpretation of BSG's stance, or kind of like behavior? Because it seems the general consensus for me is like, if it's kind of like Fight Club. It's like you know about it, you're not supposed to talk about it, type of thing.
Yeah, like I want to preface this by saying that I'm not an SBT dev. I don't talk for anyone else. I'm just a modder. Like, I'm on the same tier as someone who just plays SBT. I'm not affiliated whatsoever. My interpretation... Look, SBT is against the TOS. Like, that's pretty obvious. I mean, so is all these different tools or websites that show you different stats of, say, ammo, or... I think Logical Solutions is a good example. But he does... Like, he got in trouble with BSG a few times. If it's in the TOS, in the sense BSG, like, they're completely entitled to enforce the TOS. Like, I have no gripes or animosity towards BSG for that reason. Like, I completely understand. At the same time, SBT is as legitimate as you can be within that kind of grey area. Like, you have to have a legitimate copy, for example. Like, pirated copies are detected, and you won't be able to play SBT if you have a pirated copy. And if they find out you have a pirated copy, you're banned from the Discord or the website or whatever. So, like, it's an awkward position to be in. Like, I have to watch, even during this podcast, I have to kind of be careful how I phrase things in that sense. But on the one hand, I wish BSG would be more accepting of it, but I completely understand why they wouldn't be. Like, at the end of the day, BSG have their own vision for the game. They have their own development process, and I can respect that. It's like clear, like, no matter what issues we have with EFT at the moment when it comes to like desync or cheating or the balancing of the game. Unlike a lot of game studios these days, it's clear they have passion and they care about the game. And they're doing their best. And I can respect that. So if they don't want to acknowledge SBT, or if they want to, whatever stance they take, I understand and accept that.
I think the thing that frustrates some people in the community about BSG's stance on SBT is that they kind of like want it both ways, right? It's like, are you ever going to produce a single player version where I can play with my, well, like not even play with my friends, but like a single player version with progression that I can play on my own? No. Like, okay, well, will you endorse like a modded version where you can play on your own with progression? Also, no. And I think that's kind of what annoys people, because it's like, there's a demand for that and people will seek it out, right? And I do feel that, yeah, like they have this stance. I actually was kind of worried at one point that they were going to get really crazy, because I remember, didn't Nikita say something on Twitter or whatever? Like, I can't remember. He said something at some point. Maybe he said it on one of the podcasts or something, just saying like
It's a podcast.
he was going to like go after like SPT people or something. I can't remember.
Something like this, yeah.
So I'm kind of, maybe he was just kind of in the mood for blood and fury. I don't know, but I'm kind of glad that hasn't seemed to come to pass, at least anyway, as far as I can tell. Maybe something did happen in the background, but because, as you said, right, the guys at SPT are pretty cautious and don't want to, don't want to come across as like being like egregious, I guess, with the thing, right? They're not there to like make money or to try and monetize it against BSG. I think there's been a couple of people. Remember that was that thing that you showed me, Church, which was like Labs Arena kind of thing
Yeah.
at one point, which like those things do get cracked down upon, I think, and that's like one thing, making it multiplayer, but having a single player game that's offline, doesn't connect to the net, like you get banned if you have pirated versions and all this stuff. Like they're kind of as careful as they can be for doing the thing that certain people want, and there's good reasons why people want that kind of thing. And yes, it's just it's unfortunate. Like, what do you, in your opinion, what do you think is their biggest like gripe? I know that we're just speculating, but because I always thought it was piracy first and foremost, not like the hackers, cheaters having access to code and that kind of thing. Like, do you agree with that, or do you think there's another reason?
I mean, BSG have a. There's been controversies with BSG in the past, using DMCA to take down certain channels or videos. I think they're just protective of their IP, and I'm not sure if it's a good analogy, but like when it comes to say copyright, you can't really pick and choose when you enforce your copyright. If you're very selective of enforcing it in the future, if you want to say litigate against someone for abusing your copyright or IP, and in the past you have instances where you allowed it, in that court case, they could be like, well, in this case, you didn't enforce it, so why in this case is it a problem? So maybe it's purely a legal thing where it's in their TOS, and if they make exceptions willy-nilly, in the future it might kind of harm them trying to make a case, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. That's
maybe.
Potentially a case.
Otherwise, I mean, it's kind of a tricky topic, let's say. I don't want to speculate too much. I don't want to make assumptions.
I kind of see your point where it's kind of like, it's almost easier as well just to say like blanket, just like no. Because BSG actually kind of do this, right? They say like, oh, we don't approve of these things. But like some of the stuff is either not detectable or like they kind of turn a blind eye, whatever. Like if it's just easier at the headline level to be like, yeah, we don't approve. And then just sort of let people get on with it. As long as it's not like interfering, then they kind of like let these things sort of just continue on. Because I mean, ultimately, there's not really a lot that they can do, right? Like, can't really do that much other than just say, well, we wouldn't do it. It's against TOS, so you could get banned if you found doing whatever. And that's kind of as far as they take it most of the time. So missed opportunities or whatever, but at least they don't go too crazy about it. But yeah, I mean, it's just easier to say no to everything than it is try to allow certain things and then get burned. So I do
maybe
sympathize.
Maybe Logical Solutions is a good example in the sense that it seems they're happy for him to post, say, balance changes or whatever. But when he spoiled, say, in-game events, like, Halloween or Christmas or whatever, it seems like they had more of an issue of people spoiling live events, kind of taking the kind of momentum out of that, versus like, what's his name? No Food After Midnight posting ammo stats. They don't seem to mind that. Whereas, like, it's the same process. That's all I'll say. Like, when it comes to figuring out an event that's coming up versus stats for ammo or guns or whatever, the process is the same. So to me, it seems that BSG more cares about the intent or the consequences of sharing that information.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, because they do hate that. And I mean, a lot of people do, to be fair. And that kind of just brings back to a lot of people give BSG crap for all sorts of stuff, but they do actually care about that game. They do like to surprise people with stuff. Nikita in particular likes seeing people's reaction. Like when they managed to pull off snow without anybody knowing, and it just went off in everyone's raid. Like they did the airdrop stuff without anybody knowing. And they love to do that kind of thing. I think that's like part of the fun for them, actually. And so when people like spoil that, that's actually, they like take most offense to that more than anything else. Which sort of harkens back to the fact that they do care and they do have passion, and that they're building it from a place of love, whatever form that actually takes in reality. Yeah, they are they do care about the game and the way that people perceive it, and how people interact with it and the experiences they have with the game. Like that does matter to them, which is good.
Yeah,
It's good.
I agree.
So, yeah.
I just had one other thing I wanted to mention and kind of get your perspective again, Fontaine, was one of my favorite aspects of playing the Realism mod that you created was the stance system that you implemented, where you could, I mean, there was like so many different, stances. I'm not even sure if I like fully grasped everything that was happening, but as a brief overview, you had like your standard ready to fire position, right? And then you had like a high ready and a low ready. And then there was even like this canted one feature. I mean, honestly, I should probably just let you explain it because I'm probably fumbling and like doing saying the wrong thing for everything. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the idea is that I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Ground Branch.
I'm not.
I've heard of it. I haven't played it.
It's a tactical shooter. I've taken actually a lot of inspiration from that. So the idea is that, like in real life, if you're holding a firearm, aiming at a target or whatever, your arms get tired, right?
Sure.
So logically, you'd want to put your gun, down or up in a way your arms are relaxed. So the way I implemented that is, if you're just holding the gun in front of you like Tarkov is at the moment, your arm stamina drains over time. So the idea is, to prevent that from happening, you either hold the gun low or high. And like, either stance has like different bonuses or minuses. Like, if you're in high ready, not sure if you're familiar with in EFT, say you have like a MP5K or an MP9 of the stock folded. When you sprint, you kind of go into this animation where you're holding the gun up in the air. Kind of like Call of Duty, the tactical sprint.
Yeah.
So I implemented it where you're in high ready. The advantage is that A, your arm stamina isn't draining. B, you sprint, you go into this kind of tactical sprint animation. You sprint just a little bit faster. Like, nothing crazy, but it's like a little bit faster. But the disadvantage is your arm stamina regenerates slower and your aim is slower. So low ready has the advantage of you regenerate your arm stamina quicker and your aim faster from that stance. And I suppose conceptually, like, some people might think like that just convolutes the game, like that just makes things more difficult, or there's more keybinds to worry about. For me, it kind of makes things more immersive, makes things more fun, and it kind of adds a bit of player choice in the sense that whatever stance you choose has different advantages or disadvantages. It kind of I think slowing the pace of a game down generally it balances the game in the sense that if you could sprint everywhere and, dolphin dive and like in COD, you do the crouch spam kind of shit. It becomes super sweaty and you die in a fucking instant. Whereas if you slow the game down where you even have to worry about holding an angle, having, aiming for too long, camping too long, there's a certain disadvantage. So it adds a bit of more thinking to the game. And it kind of slows the pace down just a little bit. And with the active aim, it's kind of like, I'm not sure if you played Modern Warfare 2 kind of NVG game mode where when you aim, you kind of cant the guns to the side. I think actually Modern Warfare 2 or 3 added that as an official kind of mechanic where you kind of aim the gun sideways and you have like, it's not quite ADS where you can move a bit faster, but it's not as accurate. So it's basically adding more player choice, more ways to interact with the game world and the firearms and that kind of thing. It kind of enhances, at least I think it enhances the kind of gameplay in that sense.
Yeah, I really liked how I had to think about what would be the most effective way to get to point A and point B, and it was also kind of like one of these gambling, situations where it's like I could have my gun in this position and sprint, but this position wouldn't be as effective if I got caught in a scav or something came around the corner. And like another like attention detail I liked is if you like use a lot of your sprints and you exit your sprint towards the end, your character's reading heavy. Your animations were also like penalized as if you were out of breath and you had to like
Yeah.
spring your gun up. Like I thought it was very and yeah, there was it was extra keybinds, and Tarkov is already keybind like limited. But if you could get it to work, I thought it was very fun, like managing all of that and having it definitely gave it more thought to approaching different situations and having to utilize the different stances in your favor to have the best outcome. I liked it. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, thanks. And like, there's a way to implement that without punishing the player. Like, you don't have to have their arm stamina drain over time. It's like BSG added the left shoulder stance, you could call it. Like, you don't have to use that. That just adds another layer, another way to play the game. They could implement that sort of thing where those different stances just give you some small advantage in some way. So it becomes more of a choice than a necessity. Like if I was like, honestly, all these different features I implement in my mod, like I'm not worrying about the balance of PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not a concern, which is kind of liberating in a sense.
Right.
But like in a multiplayer environment, you can definitely implement these sorts of features where it's completely optional. Like you don't have to use these different stances, but if you choose to, it kind of gives you a small advantage in one aspect.
Yeah, it was very cool. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I also just briefly wanted to get your thoughts on, because I have my own grievances with the BSG shoulder swapping. Like one of the things that like pestered me was if you like switch shoulders and then you sprint, your character like goes back into the right shoulder position, and then when he exits it, it's like the game still remembers that you were in the left position, so then it has to like animate back and forth. And I found that like a really frustrating experience. I don't know if I think you said you've played the swipe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have.
How does that strike you? Like, I don't want to like rag on BSG here, but I'm just curious. Like, what's your kind of thoughts on that? Because it felt very. Maybe I just had the luxury of playing two different things, right? This is like a online player studio, and then you're sort of like building upon an existing foundation specifically for offline. But it just felt like, man, going from one to the other, it was like kind of like disappointing, if I'm being honest.
Well, the way I'll be careful how I phrase this. The way they implemented it is similar to how they implemented blind fire, like the same mechanism.
Okay.
Which is limited in the sense that it's a certain animation, and if another animation has to play, like sprinting or reloading, or whatever, it has to cancel. It has to go back to the original state.
Okay.
So it's a bit stiff. It's a bit janky in that sense. Like they could smoothen it out, like, but I don't know what else they could do to, like. There's no way they can just give you complete like left-handed animations. Does that make sense? Like ultimately, all the gun is doing is moving to your left shoulder, but your right hand is still on the pistol grip. Like otherwise, we'd have to make unique animations, left-handed animations for everything, which is just not viable.
Yeah, that
so
makes
it's kind
sense.
of like it's the best they can do given the circumstances.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because I can totally see how it's similar as to the blind fire situation, because you're kind of like forced into this position. I mean, it used to be you could move around in it, but they've like removed that functionality. But yeah, if you try to like reload and blind fire, it's obviously going to cancel out the blind fire and resume it. So yeah, that I could see that. That makes a lot more sense.
I think the
Yeah, it's
one that
kind of
frustrates me the most about the left shoulder is going near walls and getting barrel stuffed.
Oh
I
yeah.
actually don't really mind sprinting so much. I don't mind reloading so much. But when you're trying to aim around a corner and then you touch the corner and then it goes, oh, it needs to do the barrel stuff animation now. So now we need to move back to the right and then lift the gun up. And then it's like to get the gun back left again, you have to be a certain distance away from the wall. Like I find it's actually quite tricky to use sometimes because I've been playing Arena a bit more. I actually rebound my keys slightly because I had the shoulder swap on a modifier and I've actually changed it just so it's straight up on the mouse because I was using it so much in Arena that I was like, okay, I just am using this constantly. Like it conflicted with the change fire mode that I had set previously. That was basically the issue. I had it kind of on the same thing. So I had like change fire mode and then shoulder swap on a modifier. Well, I've swapped those round because change fire mode, how often do I need to use it? Right? I probably use it like once per game, like unless I'm using a very specific gun. And in Arena, full auto is the default now. So I don't ever need to use the change fire mode button in Arena. So then back in EFT, it's like, okay, well now I'm just using it a lot more. And then I get stuck in certain sections where I'm like trying to lean left. But you have these like awkward moments where it's like, okay, if this is not an AI and it's actually a player, the only way to go around this corner is to be looking like have my gun around the corner, but then someone can see the barrel as it comes around. So like they know when I'm coming. Because if I go too close, it's gonna stuff the gun in, right? So I need to have like the gun, or I need to be further back from the corner, one or the other. It's just it's a bit annoying that it's that way around. Like I wish that because that would be you would think quite easy to do would be like a barrel stuff animation on the left side that you wouldn't need to it's not the same as like a reload animation or whatever. Like should be a lot more straightforward because your guy just like brings the gun up. So I would hope that they'd fix that, or at least like bring that through because that would help, to be honest. And like if they did that and left everything else, I'd probably be okay with it at this point. I think.
I'll just say that that is actually possible. That's all I'll say.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Maybe one day in 1.0.
Mm.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I guess if it's okay with everyone, we can go ahead and I just wanted to quickly bring up a topic I had in regards to best nade types to use. A little thought experiment I had this swipe in particular. I was kind of trying something different. Typically, I would just bring whatever grenades I had on hand, like F1 grenades and RG5s or whatever. But this time around, I was using a lot of the one you get from the mechanic barter, which is the VOG 17s. Is that correct?
Is that the long one? Is that like it's not the insta blow up one? It's like the kind of intermediate, sort of the unloved child of the grenades.
Yeah, VOG 17 because it's I don't know, the grenades are kind of similar as like I think there's some variation. Like the F1 has like more shrapnel versus the RGD, but the fuse is the same, but the VOG 17's got like a slightly shorter fuse. It used to have it even shorter. Like I think when they first came out, they were like, and this was ages ago. This was before the VOG 25s and the impact grenades, but nowadays it's like 3 versus 3.5, but I think it has like a bit more. There's all these stats. I haven't really looked into too much, but I'm getting to my point. Is I used those for a while because you could just buy the grenade fuses off the flea market and barter for the grenades that way. And eventually, once I got higher up in the levels and had more strength, I started using M67s a lot. And I've seen a lot of the pro streamers use M67s, and I've always just kind of like strayed away from them just because it's so different than pretty much the entire lineup. But you kind of got like two categories. You got your typical grenade, which is like 3-second fuse ish, and then you got like the impact / instant grenades, just like the VOGs, mainly the VOG 25 and the impact grenades. And then you got the M67. It's kind of like out on its own. It's like really long fuse. I think its stats are like pretty good, like big explosion, big damage, but it has that long fuse. And a lot of the things you'll see from like Glorious and Villers and some of these other guys, they'll like, basically look almost vertically and like yeet the nade up in the air. And then you just wait. It's like silence for 5 seconds. A grenade lands like behind the wall on the PMC and blows up instantly. And I think it helps a lot if you have a higher level of strengths, because then you get into this weird spot where like early in the wipe, you can basically do that same practice with the F1s and regular RG5s, but as you get higher strength, the explosion radius starts, the fuse
Oh, I
timer starts blowing
see.
up higher and higher as you go up in the strength, so you can't actually like lob it up in the air and artillery mortar strike them with the grenade. So I've been using them, and the other thing I haven't really done as much, or not even at all, is they'll often like throw the grenade in like a very close quarter situation, but they'll like push with the grenade. So you're on the receiving end. It's like, well, I have to move for grenade, but then he's like the person that threw the grenade is chasing also. But because it's such a long fuse, they can like shoot you in the back and also get in the cover before their own grenade kills themselves. Like it's a pretty clever play. So yeah, I was just curious what you guys kind of thought were maybe your preference on grenades, or what you think is like the best type of grenade to go with
Oh man.
situationally. Because nowadays it's typically, you have to bring all the same type of grenades unless you want to keybind each individual one. Because when you pull out the grenade, it pulls out a random one from your rig. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I was talking about that the other day on stream about how like grenades got nerfed in two ways: the 2-stage pin pull,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the randomization. Like the pin pull was enough; like they didn't need to randomize the grenades. But it sounds like they were never going back. Like I know Veritas and Jesse had that conversation on the podcast about how like Jesse complained about it, and Veritas messaged Nikita, and he was just like, "Niet." So I think that's basically it. But like it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, I consider myself a bit of a grenade noob. Like I'm not very good with grenades, and also I
Mm-hmm.
think as a chronically solo player, grenades these days with the 2-stage pinpull is really hard. Like they're
Yeah.
basically area of denial over long distances, which means you're very unlikely to kill somebody with them in the first place. If somebody's like anywhere near you, and I did this the other day, and you just feel so victorious. You just hear the click of them doing the first stage, and you just run them down, and they die.
Yeah.
And it's like you just can't use them most of the time. So typically, I will bring. It kind of depends where I'm going, but I will normally bring the RGD5 usually because it's
Mm-hmm.
about half the weight of the F1. I think because what was it 310 grams, and
Yep.
the other and what's the F1? Yeah, like
6.
600.
Yep.
So usually I'll bring the RGD because they're basically the same grenade these days. I think the F1 used to be a wider blast, but they've like they're all very similar as you said, except
Mm-hmm.
maybe the M67's a bit bigger. And then sometimes I'll bring what's the fuse time on the VOG 25? Because you surprised me before because you said, oh, it got changed, da da da. And I actually didn't realize the VOG 17s were different because you are right. They used to be two, like I was going to say 2.5. And then when you clicked into it and it said 3 seconds, I was like, oh, like I actually don't know when that got adjusted.
VOG
But
25 is 2, and then
that's
as you
still two.
said.
2 is so short. So the VOG 25s I do like. They're
Mm-hmm.
really good on places like Factory. They're sort of like, the impact grenade at home,
Yeah.
Because 2 seconds is still quite hard. If you're on target with it, it's still quite hard for
Mm-hmm.
somebody to get out of the way. By the time that it's gone through the air and then they hear the tink tink, and it's like they turn and they try to sprint and inertia, and you're dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're on target with it. So I do like VOG 25 still for like Factory and like Underground Reserve and like probably labs and places like that. I'll tend to bring those. That's usually what I do. But the only other thing that I would say about it is I've been starting to try and bring smoke grenades because I really want them to work. I've been trying to bring the M18s, the green smokes, and I used one on an airdrop the other day, which was quite good. It was like nice to get into that situation and be like, oh, I can use the green smoke on the airdrop. This is cool. I'm still trying to like make it work. Something weird. I don't know whether it was the airdrop, whether it was my game, whether there was a bug or something, but it looked really weird. It was almost as if I was like stood in like a thermal or something. Like the
Yeah.
two smokes like interacted with each other in this like really bizarre way, and like everything sort of like all the colors were like inverse. It was really odd. I can't really describe how weird it was, and I think it was just because the red flare from the airdrop was next to the green smoke coming out, and the whole thing just went haywire. So that was really weird. But yeah, I'd like to use those a bit more. I'm trying to. I keep forgetting, but I'm trying to take one each run at least to like, block a corridor or do something fun with it
Mm-hmm.
because there's got to be something, right? Like, it'd be cool. But yeah.
Fontaine, you have any preference on grenades or anything you specifically call out?
I mean, the last time I played live, the way I see grenades, it's more like a force multiplier in the sense that, say you're a 2-man versus
Mm-hmm.
like a 5-man. You can have one of you just chucking, 10 grenades, and it puts pressure on the other team, and kind of gives you the opportunity to either, get out of the situation or like maneuver around them or flank them. That's kind of how I see grenades. Like, I rarely actually kill people with grenades. It's more about, like Giga said, area denial, and suppressing people.
Yeah, I think like I don't even have Grenadier done this wipe.
Really?
I think I've got like 3 out of 8. Like I just don't really use nades. Like I tend to only bring 1, honestly, because more than that, and it's like I just don't really use them. I probably should, honestly. I probably should up my grenade usage a bit. But someone was asking actually in chat, like, yeah, how do you think I should do this? And I was like, probably the best way, if you actually wanted to get Grenadier done now, because I did a video a while ago about Grenadier and like get the impacts or whatever, but like you can't get impacts anymore because they took the barter away because they're finding raid only now. So it's like much harder. You can't, you have to slowly farm them over time and then go in with 10 of them and try to get it done. And if you fail, you have to then farm them again. Go to all the grenade boxes, blah blah, slowly get them. So someone was like, is there a faster way do you think of doing it than doing that? Because like stuff's changed since your video. And I was like, well, I guess if I was going to have to like pick a strategy to get grenade kills now, it probably would be going into factory with the KS-23 with the flashbang round, flash people in the face, and then throw the VOG at their feet. That's probably what I would do if I had to. Not that I'm going to, but if you want to do it, that's probably the best way. Which is quite
Or you find a Timmy and you shoot him in the leg.
Yeah, that can work. That can work too. So yeah, stuff like that. Exactly. I like people not being able to see, and then because they might run against the wall, they can't like stuck against a box or whatever. Like I haven't used those for a bit. I haven't been hit by one either for a while. People have forgotten about it. You remember when those came out and everyone was just like crying bloody bird about how OP it's going to be? Like, you can still
was OP.
It was, to be fair, at the beginning.
That's all factory was.
Yeah.
Good times though.
Yeah, interesting times. We've been through many iterations of different things. What else were people scared about? I can't remember. Impacts people were worried about. But the thing is, a lot of these things that were OP are now, either really expensive. Thermals, like really, that was probably the first thing. They're now really expensive. KS-23 is like barter only. The flash round you have to craft. The impact you can only find in raid. The grenade launcher got nerfed multiple times. Yeah, there's always the Mosin. There is always the Mosin. I got 2-tapped by a Mosin guy behind a tiny, thin little, like, the tiniest tree on streets. I could not pen it with 85501, and he just leaned around and shot me twice. I was using a 100-round M4 meme gun yesterday, and I just could not kill him through this tree, and he just went bang, bang, and I died. I was like, that's the most disappointing thing ever, honestly. I must have shot like 60 times at this, whatever it was, some like small poplar tree or something. Very frustrating. Did you find the long fuse grenades were like good just in general though then? Church? Like did you like bomb people with them or just to like close the conversation?
Occasionally. I mean, I think the main primary place or purpose that grenades serve now is, as you guys both stated, is they're basically just area denial. Like you just throw them and maybe you get a kill, maybe not. I mean, it's really a thing, right? So the trick is though is bring 4. Like I fill my pockets with grenades because if you're bringing 1 and it takes you 1 out of 4 to get a grenade kill, then it's like you got to play a lot of raids. So if you just bring a lot, then it's just like you just increase your odds, and they're relatively useful for maybe you're running away and you just want to yeet a grenade to or keep them. Maybe you fought someone, you disengaged for a bit, you healed up, they haven't healed up. You could just throw a grenade just to have that sound play, so you could like reposition. I mean, they're okay. But yeah, it was a long, slower grind. I mean, I got it much, probably in my 40s. I got it done.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's okay. It's not a quest I prioritize. I'm not really that fast, but yeah, I probably should use them a bit more. I probably under prioritize it, like even just to lob them out. The one thing that actually I hate about them the most is that they draw in more attention. Like normally I'm like, we go into raid and we go suppressed on purpose, and then we throw a grenade, and it's like, isn't that kind of counter to what we're doing here? Like I don't really want people to know where I am. So if I have a fight with somebody, I'd rather just like kill them and then be sort of quiet, and then I can loot. Like if you do kill somebody after you've grenaded 4 times, then you're like, well, I'm never going to loot this body, not as a solo. Like there's no way, because just have everybody swarming on you. So that's like another thing I'm just not really that keen on with them.
So tell me about this Pestily hardcore tournament. I was kind of surprised to hear that phrase.
Yeah, because I talked about this. I don't even know when we talked about this last time. There was a where was it exactly? Yeah, so Pestily put out a tweet, and he said, I was reading it and just like, oh, okay, this is cool. He said, with the increased popularity of people trying hardcore, which is cool to see, I can't stress enough, if you can afford it, please do it on a standard account. It isn't a speed run, it's like a puzzle, and you need to pick what's valuable for the time over just getting everything and getting it all done ASAP, which I was like, okay, that's like pretty interesting. When I tried hardcore, I like did it with the smaller secure container. I just, had like 1 ruble in each slot or whatever, just to, like block out the secure container. Like, didn't really matter. Like cut my stash down so that it was smaller, put like a line of 1 rubles in to demark the line and whatever. Like you could do it however you like, but I think like that's pretty cool. And I haven't done hardcore yet this white, but I'm maybe do it later on. But he said, like, I'm in talks with BSG about doing a private event for hardcore involving a few thousand people. It will be done on a standard account for that also. Enjoy. Which is like, I so want this. We've been talking about this for what? Like since the cast started, like over a year. It must have been well over a year that we've been talking about this, because he has been threatening us with a good time for a long time. And I just really, really want to see it, because as I posted myself, and as we've talked about here before, the difference between self-imposed hardcore rules where you're playing against other people playing the live game versus everybody else is playing hardcore, it's night and day. Like it's so different. Like you are never going to pick up a better gun in the hardcore
that would be
game.
so much fun.
Like everybody's going to be using crap stuff. Like all the firefights, if somebody does beat you with something like sick that they picked up, you're just like, fair enough. Like you found that in raid and you're risking it. And if you lose it, you can't get another one. It's like all of that stuff. It just, everything about it would make things feel so much cooler. And I think that hardcore, something like this is the perfect place for like extreme veterans of the game, to like play and do stuff like that. So I'm excited. I'm really hoping that this comes through as a thing, because I want to play it. I want to play it, especially after doing hardcore one time. Like it was fun and it was exciting and it was new and it felt different. And as Pestily says, like it's not a speed run, it's like a puzzle. And it's like, okay, now you've played Tarkov for X thousand number of hours. Here's Tarkov again, but in a way that you've never seen before, in a way that you've never played before. And you have to like look at things that you didn't have to previously. Like I remember we talked about it, right? Like I struggled so much with headsets. It's like, well, I can't buy them. Where are they? There's like hardly any barters for them. The only ones that you can really get are at levels like 2 and 3. There's like the Veritas pick for the sword ins and things, but it's like level 2 or 3 Ragman. Because in hardcore you're still allowed to use the barters. So you're like really restricted. Like, GSSH for a pack of paper. Paper's actually like relatively rare in terms of a pickup. It's not very useful, but there's not really that many great sources of paper per se. Like you have to go through a lot of filing cabinets to find them. And like sometimes you find them as loose leaf. There's not that many. So you end up running out of headsets all the time. And scavs like very rarely have a headset actually. So you're either picking them up off PMCs or a few other like scarce locations. And yeah, I was really coveted of the couple of headsets I had, and I was using them, pairing them with like the good things that I found to try to do the next thing. So yeah, it's good. It's like it's a whole new game for people who are very experienced and want a new challenge. So yeah, it'd be sick. I mean, I'll probably die like every 5 seconds, because it's gonna be like 1,000 people who are like freaking cracked at the game, and there's me just like, okay, I know how to get all the items, but as soon as I come into contact with anybody, I die probably. But so be it. I want to see what the experience is like. So that could be quite fun. The other thing that I kind of there was the classic in the comments. I just reminded myself. I go back to Twitter. The classic in the comments of being like, "It's not hardcore unless you reset your account every time you die," which is like, yeah, that's fine. Like Tarkov hardcore should probably have been called like Iron Man, because I think that's more like, I know Lupo actually said it's not hardcore unless you reset the account every death. I think he's just kidding though. He's just joking around. But there were like some people who were like serious about it. I think it's like it probably should have been called Tarkov Iron Man, because that's like the game mode from other games. It's like more analogous, I think. And hardcore is like when you die, you die.
Right.
Tarkov hardcore should really be more like you have to live out of your backpack or whatever. Or if you die, you have to like delete everything and start again, kind of thing. So that's whatever. But like, hardcore in Tarkov means a very specific thing. It means like a specific rule set. It means that you don't reset every time you die, but you've got like just limited access to traders and whatever. So that'd be kind of fun. I did actually see, on that note, there was another post. There's actually Hayes who's like doing this challenge at the moment. I don't know why it's called the Tango Challenge, but it's basically like it's like a roguelike challenge.
Oh,
So he said he's
interesting.
made a few. If you scroll down a little bit, there's the first set here. So he says here, like, looking for something to do. Tarkov Tango challenge, a roguelike challenge with twists to make things slightly easier depending on performance in the previous life, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, I haven't looked at
Huh.
it like intimately yet, but it's like, yeah, only fighting raid, no trades or flee, no scav, no therapist healing or anything. You start with a Makarov, and you have to like kill any boss on a map to progress to the next map. You have to like follow the dotted line on the Tarkov map to the next map. Like, so it's got like some semblances of the sort of map to map travel thing that you
Mhm.
did a bit ago, as well as like hardcore, but like, you kind of progress as well, like depending on how well you do in each life, which is kind of like interesting. I've not really seen anybody do like a roguelike style, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it says here, death. You move back one map, and you start over. So I guess you lose any, progress you made on your stash, inventory.
Mm.
So you go back to the Makarov. 10K starting money for every previous survive. So like if you survive 3, now you are allocated 30K to start with plus the
Yeah.
Makarov. That's actually pretty cool. It's like a roguelite type of spin on a Tarkov challenge rule set.
Mm. I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But it was funny because this popped up first, and then Pestily started talking about this like hardcore thing with BSG. I was just like, it's kind of cool. I like it. I like the idea of it. And like, yeah, other people have had the idea of having a checkbox in Tarkov where you can check hardcore and it like enforces the rule set on you, but you could turn it off later, but you couldn't obviously turn it back on again. That kind of thing, which would be kind of neat. Which I thought was another good idea. But yeah, it's like, I think it's fun. I think it's fun. Like the issue that Tarkov's always had is that to the veterans, the game's like relatively straightforward, especially like making money. Like surviving and killing lots of players is not necessarily that easy, but I mean, it is for some people. Definitely not for me, but it is for some people. But yeah, adding the new flavor does make the game different, at least, and a bit more interesting. So I would like it. Like it. I just want to see what happens. Just almost an experiment more than anything else.
Yeah.
See
Yeah,
how it plays out.
that'd be, especially if it was like broadcasted. Like I don't even know how they would do it, but if it's feasible and if it's like, watchable, if I don't have to like spend my next, live and waking day I'll need like Tarkov hardcore recap YouTube videos. So this player killed this player and then this player had to start over, but he found the golden AK that gave whatever. Yeah, so you want to tell me about making money in the hideout, the results. I took a peek at I think it was one of your previous broadcasts, I think. And I saw you had the spreadsheet up. I was like, oh, he's cranking up
I
the
did.
numbers.
When Fontaine was talking earlier about a professional development environment and experience versus a modder who's like hacking together a solution kind of in any which way, it kind of reminded me of like people go like, oh, can you share XYZ spreadsheet? And I'm like, maybe, but like I built this for me. Like I need to like clean it up before it's like ready for public consumption or whatever. And it's like I felt that very strongly in like a small way, especially with like spreadsheeting, because like this one, I like showcased it and I was like, oh, I've done, I've made it, like, I've done something wrong here. Like, I haven't dragged the formulas down enough, but like, whatever, it's good enough for now. It's like that kind of thing. Like, it's not foolproof. And it's like, there's issues with it that like I fix on the fly when I'm doing it. But yeah, it just reminded me of that. But anyway, so far, I'm not like 100% finished because it's basically going to be like by the end of tonight. I was going to do like a working week's worth because I don't typically come on and play, particularly over the weekend, not even to really cycle crafts, to be honest, because I'm just like busy with the fam. But we're kind of near the end so far. I mean, I'm quite impressed because I said like the original reason why I did this was because I went down to 6 million rubles because I bought all my GPUs for the Bitcoin farm because I wasn't expecting to get Bitcoin farm level 3, but I did find that one item in labs. Didn't find the other one, but I did find the one that got me the solar power and allowed me to build the Bitcoin farm 3. So I had to buy 25, 30. I can't remember exactly how many, 25 or 30 GPUs, and they're hella expensive at this point in the wipe. And so I went down to. I was just like, screw it. I've got enough money to buy them all. The earlier I do it, the more money I'll make. So I'm just gonna buy them all. And then I was like, okay. This is after buying a yellow card, by the way, for 11 mil on the flea. So I was like, all right, I have 6 mil now. Like, this is quite low. I don't really care particularly. Like, I'm fine with 6 million. Like, it's all right. I can probably, manage with that. But like, just for content purposes, if something did appear, if there was an event or whatever, that like, you had to buy like a 10 million item or whatever it was, like, stupid stuff happens. When we were doing the other one and you had to buy the melee weapon and like it only came cheaper later on, Tarkov,
Yeah.
Terror Group Trail, all that stuff. I'm just like, I'm unable to participate in those kind of things. If suddenly something appears that I need to like get my hands on, I actually can't. So I was like, I probably should build my money back up. And I went from like 6 mil to like 20 something million within about like a week and a half or whatever.
Dang.
And so I was like, okay, this is pretty, like, this is good. Like, we're doing the right things. But I was like, where did this exactly come from? Like, I'm not really sure. Like, a lot of it from Bitcoin, sure. But like, where did the rest of it come from? So, and people keep asking me in my stream, like, oh, how do you make money? Like, how do you have so much money? And I go, well, it's Bitcoin and invest in the hideout and do some raid, like try not to die and do your scav, like this. But it's like very hand wavy. So I was like, right, we're going to formalize this in more of an experiment. So we started Monday with 41 million on the nail. I was like, I pulled some money out into my player. So we were just like, right, 41 mil exactly. And did a regular me schedules. Like, I'm not doing really anything extra. Like, I'm trying a bit harder than I would normally to actually get in some scav rounds and do the crafting or whatever. And doing like the raids on stream, which I've basically played only streets because I think that makes sense because you just make so much money there. And as of right now, at least, now it's 65,100,000. So that's like, what's that, 24 million in 4.5 days, something like that. Without doing anything too crazy, really. And like so far, like it is quite interesting how it ends up breaking down. So of that 24 mil, Bitcoin is like 6.9 million of that, which is a lot, obviously, but it's not, not the, but it's like 30% or something. The hideout itself is like all the rest of the hideout. This is like everything. And this is including, buying all the stuff and then reselling it all and blah, 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 like before and after. And there are some fudginess things to the experiment because like it's difficult to account for everything. So for example, like if you go on a scav run on factory and you have an augmentin on you, it's like, okay, I'm going to use that for crafting, but like you end up in this like accountancy problem where it's just like, where do I account for this? Like if I don't sell it but I use it in crafting got it for free, but I didn't get it, so I make the scav one look worse, but crafting looks better. So I'm like this accountant's problem of like, do I want to do I want to drive myself completely crazy and bucket this stuff? Like,
what have you gotten yourself into?
I know. I'm like, the thing is, I'm too like, I'm too pedantic about this kind of thing. Like people on stream are just like, dude, it's like 12K. Like, don't worry. And I'm like, but it's in the wrong bucket. You don't understand.
You're scared of the Tarkov BSG IRS coming. Like, where was it on McDonald's? Where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. So I have tried in all cases to, even if I'm going to buy it back later for crafting or whatever, I have like just tried to sell it off so that I get like at least the right numbers. So the hideout so far made 3 million total. Obviously, it depends on how much you cycle it. I like cycled it like a normal amount, I would say. Like sometimes I'll come back, like, because I'm doing stuff in the day as well, right? I've been running this experiment while I've been streaming, while I've been making other content. So it's like representative of the way that I play normally, which may or may not be representative for other people, but it's representative of me. I haven't sat there and like waiting the 5 seconds and like start the next craft immediately. I haven't been doing any of that stuff. And what's like kind of interesting about that in some ways is that I've got like a count of the number of lines that I put in. So I tried not to touch it too much, partly to get this information here, which is that, every now and then I'll pop in and do like 2 or 3 at once kind of thing, like 2, 3, 4. And overnight I'll come back and redo a full cycle. So I actually touched the hideout like 22 times, at least within the confines of how I've documented it, which means that every time I like go into the hideout to like do stuff, which is like a very generic way of like talking about it, because it depends on the frequency of which you actually want to go and like fiddle with things. But on average, when I go to the hideout and I do a few things in there, on average that makes me 140k. Even though it may not feel like it at the time, half the time, because I'm like, oh, buy the stuff, make pile of meds craft, refill the fuel, collect this, collect that, whatever. Like between getting the water, selling moonshine in particular, like selling rip stops and stuff like that. It's like every time I go in the hideout, I make on average 140k if I do like a couple of crafts, which is kind of interesting. I basically like did hideout stuff 22 times within this process. So it's like, okay, that's kind of intriguing. The raids went super well, made like 10 million from 12 raids, which is really good, mostly on streets. I had some like banging ones earlier on. Less so
these are
yesterday.
PMC raids?
That was PMC raids on streets. I did 12. So yeah, it was a bit less. So I had 800k on average per raid, which is like a lot more than kind of I thought. But so I had a string of really good raids where I made like a ton because I was using the BTR as well. So it was like really like packing stuff in.
Yeah.
I had like a Kolontai raid where I killed him and all of his boys as well as 2 PMCs. So like I had some like really, really good raids. Like yesterday was probably not as good on average. It was probably more like, I don't know, 500, 600k per. And then there's like the Scav factory stuff, which is I was intrigued about. So Scav on factory, I've like separated it into two parts because I actually figured that there were really two distinct ways of playing this, right? You've got scavenging on factory, you load in, you don't even look at what you've got, and you just sprint out. That's one.
Yeah, that's
That's
what
like
I
the
do.
run through. Yeah. And that's good because if you're like busy and doing other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you don't even really want to be looking around the map. Like you don't really want to be playing at all. Like you want to minimize the amount of time that you're playing a game. You want to get the most money that you can out of like the minimal in-game time. Because I spend all of the loading time like writing scripts or like working in Photoshop or whatever. So like I don't feel like I'm sat there just waiting for the game to start. And again, with the post raid, it's like the thing spins, and half the time I come back 5 minutes later to fix it because the scav cooldown continues while you're just sat there on the end screen. But anyway, so I split them into like literally just running straight through versus actually going around the map and like trying to farm either dead scavs or boxes or whatever. And that was like kind of intriguing. So in total, I ended up making 4.2 million out of Scav Factory and 800k out of run throughs. I did 13 of the Scav Factory runs and 5 of the run throughs. So on average, if I do a full like scour and try not to die and like be reasonable about a Scav Factory, I make on average 330k. Obviously, that's including like what I have on me.
Right.
And if I run through, it's 160. And that's with like 4.7 karma. So I don't have max karma. Which is intriguing. I think that's interesting. And I'm glad I split those out. I'm going to do a few more of the like run through runs as well to see. But like obviously every time you spawn with a labs card, it's like 180k straight off the bat. So there's some runs that you only get 80k or whatever.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you spawn with for those ones in particular. But yeah, like Scav Factory is still pretty good. Like even skimming around the map, I didn't time them, but like they don't take that long, right? It's like a couple of minutes. It's like shorter than the other maps, but you probably make a little fraction. Somebody did actually point out just on that topic while I remember that there was and I think BSG just tweeted their video actually, that somebody put a video out about like best scav map, and they did something similar, but like scavving on every map and like trying to make as much money on each map. And I think they ended up coming up with like reserve or something, but because I was quite surprised. I haven't watched the video yet from someone called Chuckles on YouTube.
I could see the reserve just because as a scav you have good extracts versus a PMC you have less than desirable extracts.
Yeah. It reminds me a bit of Streets in some ways. Like it's very hard to play PMC on that map. There's a lot of scavs. There's easy ways out. Streets, like there's a lot of extracts for PMC, but you have to traverse the whole map a lot of the time. There's a lot of scavs. It's hard to move around without getting shot at. Like scav on Streets is like easy mode. You just walk around. There's like friends everywhere. You can loot what you like. Not that bad, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Something that I remembered about. So anyway, yeah. All in all, yeah, it was 24 million through the challenge. Like I didn't want to go. The thing about it, like I had people saying a few things like, "Oh, you're probably playing your raids too long to like maximize money on Streets and that kind of stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I agree, but I'm not really like I'm not trying to maximize money really. I'm just sort of like, with a mind to make money. I was kind of just enjoying myself on the Streets, just like having fun, and like moving around the map and doing whatever, like not getting into too many crazy fights, but just like trying to make money and survive, and be sort of semi-reasonable about it, but without being like too sweaty about it or like too try hard about it. And it was the same thing with the hideout. People were like, oh, but you could do this or that, or you could, you make a lot more money if you bulk up like 50 pile of meds and sell them at the peak time. And I'm like,
sure.
This guide's really for people who like the people who are doing that and are like, hardcore hideout people are already doing that stuff anyway. Like it's not really for them. This is kind of stems back to a conversation I had with somebody being like, the hideout's not worth it. Like there's no point doing it. Like you don't make enough money. And my stance on that being like, yeah, if you don't need the money, then sure, like don't bother. But like, I think it does make enough. And if you like, maybe if you knew how much it would make, maybe that would change your mind or whatever. Let's at least have the facts for it. So I wanted to do it in a way that was like kind of casual, like that was sort of on purpose. Like I'm not trying to min-max it, because if I'm like, well, actually it is worth it, and you're going to be making 5 million rubles every week because you're going to go in and you're going to make 50 piles of meds, and you're going to look at Tarkov market and then go and like min-max the prime time in the switch. Like that person isn't going to do that. So it would be unfair of me to run the experiment in that fashion, if that makes sense. So that's why I kind of did it in a more chill way. It's like basically anytime, it also made it easier to account for this stuff, right? Anytime I made stuff in the hideout, I'd just sell everything on the fleet straight away at like the best price I could, but just that's actually going to sell. Because if stuff's like lying around, then it's not in my ruble count, and then I have to adjust for it, and it's just like a pain in the ass, right? Like if I've got like 5 different items, I've got 2 bottles of moonshine, and I've got like 50 piles of meds. There's like $500,000 that's going to come in at some point later that I got to keep account of if it does or doesn't sell, because otherwise it's going to go in the wrong bucket, and then the experiment's going to be like, toasted. So there was that element of it too.
All your assets are in like pile of meds, nuts and bolts, and
Yeah, exactly. So no, I thought it's interesting. It's interesting. I'll do the last few runs today, and I'm going to put something out about it. I think it's just like cool to track and stuff. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean anything per se, but I think it'll make a fun video, and like it'll just give people an idea of like where the money might come from, depending on how many raids you do. I think having the averages is quite good as well.
yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, if you did this, it'll probably be this. If you do that, it'll be this. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to do. I've enjoyed it.
So I'm curious, as like a quick breakdown, do you have the ability to give me a breakdown percentage of each individual source, and then also PMC versus other percentage breakdown? Because I'm very curious on like this idea, because this is more, as you said, about where's the money coming from, right? So I'm very curious, because I've always like kind of speculated. Like, one thought, I'll be brief. One thought I've had is, what if someone could like write a script? This would be problematic, but if you could write a script to like load Scav Factory and like navigate, and probably impossible as well, but navigate to the extract, and the script would just like continually run. You go to work, you come back, you got everything just sells the fish. You just got rubles filling your stash. Like, I'd be curious to know how much you could make on average.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting experiment to do. Yeah, so to answer your questions, so the biggest percentage was my PMC raids.
Okay.
Despite doing, so I did, how many raids have I done this week? So I did 3, like as usual, 3 streams, 12 raids, because they're quite a lot. I've been doing long raids on streets, and so they account for 41% of the total, versus everything else being 59%. So like the PMC is less than half, even though it's the biggest proportion overall. The sum total of everything else comes to more than half of the money made, which is kind of an interesting takeaway. Like, it's a big source of cash, but everything else together is more. And then what was the other question? What was the other one?
What's like the second highest? Like,
so
each individual percentage.
Yeah.
Of each...
So PMC raids was 41%. Bitcoin was number 2 at 29. Scav Factory so far, like proper scouring through Scav Factory, is number 3 at 18%. The hideout was 13%, and Scav Factory run throughs so far is only 3%. I've only done like 5 raids on that, to be fair. I didn't do that many because I was like scouring through at the beginning, and I was like, actually, I should segregate this out. So like Scav Factory together is 21% as like number 4. They don't quite add up, because I had like a couple of random things that I bucketed. Like I completed Gunsmith Part 23 or whatever, and I was just like, that's going to go into other. So I have like an other category, and quests, which was for like random stuff. I think I bought a money case or whatever. So I segregated those things out as their own. But yeah, in terms of like money made, so it's like, raids 41%, Bitcoin 29%, hideout 13%, and scav runs in general 21%. That's it so far.
Essentially, like the hideout itself, excluding the Bitcoin farm, is relatively small. Like, I thought it would have been a little bit higher, like double digits, like 15.
Yeah, I actually thought that too, because it's almost like that's almost probably the most interesting takeaway. That was what I decided to do it for in the first place, to try to show people that it was worthwhile. And I actually kind of proved to myself that it like wasn't as worthwhile as I had thought, which is interesting, right? Like, I didn't, it's hard to know. Like, well, I think it's because you see yourself selling the stuff. There's this bias of like, you see yourself selling all the items.
Right.
You don't necessarily account correctly mentally for all the things you have to buy. You're putting the water filters in, and they cost 160k or whatever. And like, yeah, you can craft them back into other things, but you have to then like, it's still expensive, right, to purchase this stuff. And everything's got an input on it. So, I think that was slightly surprising, but like, it's still worthwhile, but like, it's lower than you might think, I think.
Yeah,
and that's with like hideout level 3 as well.
There's some aspects that can't be quantified, like just the ability to craft high tier ammo that you can only find in raid. Crafting quest items,
and like level 5 plates, for example.
The bonuses, the passives you get, more money, more XP, more level skills. The gym, you can work out. There's so many different things there that's like value that it's kind of hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Even just the shooting range, like the ability to test out your gun, it's like That's invaluable. I don't want to load up a factory offline, right?
But I guess if you bundle those things together, Bitcoin and the hideout, so the hideout as a
Yeah.
whole is made the same amount of money as me playing Streets all week.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. Bitcoin is nutty to swipe, so that checks out.
It is crazy. It's like come off a little bit, but yeah, it's like 900k per at the moment, which is insane. Insane.
When you last played Fontaine, it was back when Reserve was around, like it just dropped, correct?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Were you a big hideout person? I mean, I know you said you played since Alpha, which, you know, hideout was like relatively new during Reserve and Flea Market probably previously a couple patches ago. What are your thoughts on all this money talk?
I mean, like, the last time I played seriously, Found and Raid wasn't even a thing. So, like, you could just buy whatever you wanted or needed from the flea market. So, like, I never really bothered with crafting or anything like that. Like, my playstyle was always kind of just focusing on quests, to be honest. Like, I never worried too much about PvP or kind of, you know, min-maxing value for money or economy or anything like that. Kind of like, it kind of took the game more like a tactical shooter in that sense.
That's kind of like how, do you know SW Tower, Fontaine? Does that name sound familiar?
No, I can't say it does.
He's kind of like a veteran, but, you know, kind of like almost behind the scenes, but like if you know him type of thing. Yeah, I think he hangs a lot around like Airwing Marine circles. He's like a huge ballistics guy, but anyways, he plays kind of similarly where he doesn't really do quest, but he sort of just like doesn't interface with the hideout or flea market. It's like whatever he loots, he uses that. Like he'll use like a VSS, a boonie hat, and like a PSO scope on that thing. And yeah, it sounds bad, but once you see him in action, then you're gonna have second thoughts about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of my playstyle as well, to be honest. Like, I just use what I loot from other people, to be honest. Maybe that's just like a way of coping with being bad at the game. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, it's funny too. It surprised me, but when I played Should've, that's what he told me. It's like he just uses guns he finds. He doesn't bother modding them. Like he actually found that part not engaging or not fun, enjoyable for him, like modding and stuff. Whereas like, you know, someone like me, like I really, when I first got the game, I had to like spend ages learning and, you know, changing each individual part. Like trying to figure out the difference between suppressors on some guns, like that have the muzzle attachment and the suppressor. It's like you gotta click, remember the numbers, click, remember the numbers. Oh god, what was the numbers? Oh, I mixed the ergo with the recoil. No, I gotta go back and re-click everything. It's like, but yeah, I've just done so much of that over the years. It's like, God, just min-maxing little goblin, bigger number better. That's kind of my brain.
Just always funny how so many different people have so many different experiences with the game. It's partly what makes it so great. That's why people keep coming back, right? There's something for most people here. You either like you play the game for the game itself, you do the quest, you do the min-maxing, you pick up other people's stuff, you do the ratting thing, you know, you play like super budget, you infiltrate yourself amongst scavs and, you know, make friends with them and then kill them, like whatever you want to do, right? There's a room for everything. My chat was trying to get me to do that the other day. I was just like, I don't think I'm going to pull that off. Like, I just don't really play that way.
That would be fun to see you do that. That would be fun.
Pose a beef.
All right. Well, on that note, anything else? Any closing thoughts? Anything you wanted to say, Fontaine?
I'll just take the opportunity to say you can enjoy live, you can enjoy SBT. Like, you don't have to be toxic to one community or the other. Like, ultimately, we all love EFT at the end of the day. Like, that's why we're here. And I have a lot of respect for BSG and Nikita, and like, what I'm doing is not to try to shit on BSG in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I really respect you saying that because I think it's easy to fall into that space. I would wager to say I'm even guilty of that myself, kind of being in awe of some of the stuff people over there, the other modders have done. It's very, it looks very glamorous, but the reality is it's very different worlds. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a business, there's management. I mean, whereas you're working with such confined space, it's offline. It's almost a completely different sphere or a different side of this coin. But yeah, I think that's really mature of you to say that. And I appreciate you sounding that off.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I'm really glad we got to do this.
It's been good.
Cool.
All right, with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye bye.